All right. ETM Hotep. Hopefully, I could be heard loud and clear. This is your brother Wujau again with a short, brief lesson. I've been trying to keep them short as I can. The last lesson was a little longer than I anticipated, but it was necessary. We talked about whether the hieroglyphs in this temple of Seti the First in Abydos were they spaceships or flying saucers and things. So here we are again for another brief lesson, and I'll do my best again to keep them as brief as possible. I like to keep them digestible, so you don't have to sit here and don't want to bore you. But hopefully you'll benefit from information. I don't want to cut it too short, where things are you can't understand what's going on. So I've been doing these lessons to really just expose people to tidbits of information dealing with the language of ancient Kemet that we know as Rani Kemet is the name of the spoken language, and Sesh Netcher is the indigenous name for the writing system, and that's the glyph that you see on the screen now. The glyphs read Sesh Medew-ntr, which is the inscriptions of divine words, and simply we just put the writing system. So tonight I'm just going to briefly talk about chakras, whether they existed in Kemet and so on. We see a lot of people talk about chakras and they connect them to ancient Egypt or ancient Kemet, and along with other practices, yoga, tantra, and things like that. So I do want to start off by saying that the chakra system that's in the Indus Valley system in India and things like that is a very beautiful system. And I always tell people that I give an analogy with automobiles. You can't take a Honda engine and put it inside of a Mercedes Benz and expect it to work properly. And so I say that because a lot of times these systems within cultures, they're closed systems that work very well within the system. But when we mix and match pieces of systems together, they're not effective as if they were left alone in the proper system. Just like car parts, you always want to buy original parts to your car. You don't want to buy third-party parts or mismatched parts to your car from a junkyard or whatever the case is. You want factory-made original parts to go to your car. So I use that as an analogy because that's the way these systems operate. They're beautiful systems and they're very effective within the content and context of their particular culture. So for example, Chinese culture, they have feng shui, which is their spatial science, where they deal with directionality and things like that. You have Bazi astrology as an Asian practice. You have I Ching, which is their divination system. You have Qigong and a host of other things. And so those things should be left in that culture. And if any of us are to practice it, we should practice it within the context that it's in. And it'll be a lot more effective than if we try to, borrow something from over there, mix it with this over here, put a little sprinkle of this right here, and voila, we have a hodgepodge of gumbo soup. It's not effective. All right, but so I'm just making that disclaimer that the chakra system is beautiful and it's effective in the context that it's in. So I don't want anyone to think and listen to what I have to say as a jab at chakras in and of itself. Because I know people that say chakras are pseudo and things like that. And we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. We can't call everything pseudo just because we may not understand it or it's being misused. All right. So anyway, I'm going to go right into it. So chakras in ancient Kemet. First, before I begin, I always like to reference the website. This is the website, seshmedew-ntr.com, and it's the home of the Seshu Ma'ani Medew Netcher, which is a group that I'm a part of And Seshu Mani Meta Netcher means loyal scribes of divine words. It also means true scribes of divine words, and that's what we're aspiring to be, true scribes of divine words. It's an actual attested title that we've chosen to adopt. On that website, you can find resources, transliterations, translations, articles about different topics about Kemet, all things Kemet and the language. Now, these short lessons or discussions I've been having there, I don't want anyone to misconstrue them to be anything exhaustive, like an exhaustive class. I do have classes to teach actual the hieroglyphs or the Sesh Medew Netcher. It's a 12-week course, and you can find that course and register and more information on sebauniversity.com. All right, so that's what this website is for. Go to that website and you can learn more about that. And lastly, 3 publications. A 4th one is on its way. 3 publications. One deals with the 2-year-old long question of whether the Egyptian hieroglyph has been deciphered or not. We addressed that in the book fully. I mean, all you need is that book to deal with that question. We show without a doubt that it has been deciphered, and then our work that we constantly do now. You know, and that's one of the reasons why I started to do these short lessons. Got to go beyond the silly claims that people can't support or refuse to study. The book on the right of that is a simplified Sesh Medew Netcher penmanship book. It teaches you how to write or scribe the 24 monoliterals, which are the most prolific glyphs in the writing system. So they're the most used glyphs in the system. So it starts off with book 1, Monoliterals, written by Sonet Imiket. And the 3rd is a textbook that we use for the beginner's course. And the 4th book coming in the spring is Rani Kemet, the Language of Kemet, Ancient Egyptian Grammar, a synchronic descriptive grammar of the older speech of Kemet. All right, so that's going to be a textbook for the grammar, a complementary grammar course. All right, it's going to be jam-packed with information. You know, with the beginner's book and the grammar book, you'll be fully proficient in the language. All right, and later on we have a curriculum that we have also that I may share in another video. Okay, so let's jump right into this topic. Again, the topic is chakras in Kemet. I put a question mark. All right, so and yeah, I'm sure a lot of us know people that practice you know, these sciences that deal with chakras in some form or fashion. All right, so you know, put them onto this video and you know, get their thoughts. I'd love to have feedback, and if anybody has any questions of anything that I discuss on any of these videos, feel free to comment in the comment section, and I will once I'm done, I will look at the comments live, and then I always revisit them if people watch the video in the archive. All right, so a question was asked related to chakras in ancient Kemet. It was pointed out that on page 124 of the Peret Imheru by Dr. Muada Ashby, there are 2 pictures of the scales of Ma'at, with one showing 7 circles. This diagram is used to support what is conveyed on the page. Okay, so just to give you a little backdrop, I receive you know, questions periodically, and so this was one of the questions I received a while back, and I had addressed it, so I'm sharing it now in this video. So that was a question. Dr. Muada Ashby's Peret Imheru on page 124. So this is the particular page. So this is a screenshot of the page that was being asked about. And so here you see the scales of Ma'at and the psycho-spiritual energy centers. Okay, so you see how he has figure 73, and it says the green-filled papyrus on the left. This is where this diagram is from. And then on the right, we have the Kina papyrus scales of Ma'at on the right. So these are 2 scenes from 2 different papyri. All right, and this is what it reads directly from the book. It says, the serpent power system of energy centers from ancient Egypt is depicted clearly in the judgment scenes of certain papyri. The serpent power, known as Kundalini energy and as prana in India, chi in China, and rasekam in ancient Egypt, flows throughout thousands of nadis, or subtle energy channels, in the subtle or astral body. So that's I'll just read that. And so basically, remember the first sentence. It says the serpent power system of energy centers from ancient Egypt is depicted clearly in the judgment scenes of certain papyri. So let's see what is meant by clearly. So this is something that we have to address. So notice in the scene on the right, you see these dark black circles, and if you count them, they're 1, 2, 3 below the deity Amut, which is an amalgamation of hippopotamus, crocodile, and other animals. And then you have 4 circles above, totaling 7. And so this is the assumption where these 7 circles represent the 7 chakras. And by being in the judgment scene, etc., it's explained that this is a clear depiction of the serpent power system of energy centers, aka chakra system. All right. So the question is that true? Are these black circles really representing the energy centers or the 7 chakras? So this is what we're going to find out. So in order to find out, what I had to do was I had to get a very clear and large resolution copy of the actual primary source itself. So we're dealing with the Kena or Kena papyrus. So hopefully the screen will show this big enough for those watching. So this is a copy, or this is an actual facsimile of the primary source itself. This is a picture of the actual papyrus itself. So this is the Kena papyrus, and it's located in the Leiden Museum. Now, notice that these dark circles that are in this drawing, this reproduction, are not actually dark circles in the actual papyrus. So what we're actually dealing with in the papyrus is age and color discoloration throughout the ages and damage on the papyrus. In other words, the ink, the original ink that's thousands of years old, has ran beyond its borders when it was originally painted, forming what looks like circles, but these are not circles. And I'm going to zoom in so we can see it. But before I zoom in, let's just take a look. Okay, so we see these look like round objects that are being called circles. But look at Ma'at. This is Ma'at standing here. If you look at her outline, you can see that the ink has leaked beyond the borders of her figure. So there's some bleeding of the ink beyond her shape. There's some bleeding beyond her bracelet. See, her bracelet looks like a circle as well, but we know that that's not a circle. That's her bracelet on her arm, her wrist. The same thing, the other wrist where she's holding the ankh. You can see the bracelet. You can see the ink leaking beyond, bleeding beyond the borders of what was originally drawn as the bracelet. Look at Enpu. Enpu is the figure in the far left. His bracelets, same thing, bleeding. Look at the collar of Kena. This is the particular person standing here. The collar is bleeding, where it's beyond the borders of a sharply drawn collar. Look at the feather of Ma'at. The ink is bleeding beyond the borders of a sharply drawn feather. All right, and I can go on. So let's just now let's zoom in and see. So the first thing we're going to look at is the bottom or the base of this scale. Okay, but let me go back and let's look at the drawing from Dr. Moada Ashby's book. So we see that we have at the bottom, we have 3 circles. The very bottom, next, and then 4 above the deity Amut. and then it ends below the horizontal scale. Okay, so it's 7 in all. But now when we look at the actual papyrus and we count the circles, there's 1, and they're really ink, the bleeding of ink, but we have 1, 2, 3 below the deity Amut. And if we count the ones above, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. But notice that there's a 5th one below the canine-headed staff or pole that's part of the scales. So that this particular one was missed by Dr. Muhammad Ashby in his book. It's not there because it's popularly known that we have that, 7 chakras. So to draw an 8th one would kind of throw the numbers off. All right. But as you can see, there are actually 8 bleeds that make it appear to have circles here. There will be 8. So that's one thing to point out. But let's start at the base and let's see if it actually a circle. So here is the base of the scales, and if you notice now that you can see it close up, and I'll see if I can zoom in. Hopefully you all can see it clearly enough. But here, this is a close up of the base of the scale, which will be the bottom circle in Dr. Ashby's work. But as you can see, there is no circle. It's the result of color bleeding and aging of the papyrus. There are no scribal lines that indicate a circle. So if you notice the black scale, this is the base, and then it's just the color bled beyond. So whatever color this was, this is a particular color that bled easier than the other colors. Okay, so you can see the staff or the pole that this base is bracing. You can see the different colors. You can see the alteration of colors. There's a dark color here. It looks like a square or rectangle. One is faded here. One is right here at the bottom. And then the one that bled. And then there's another one above it, a rectangle. So the pole itself, or the scale pole itself, is made up of multicolored rectangles. And it just so happens that some of these rectangles made of a particular color bled through age. So there's no circle whatsoever. All right, now that's just the bottom or the base. Now we're going to move on to the top. This is the canine headed at the top of the pole for the scales. And notice this was a rectangle painted here that bled, giving the appearance of a circle. So a close-up of the top of the scale showing another stain like the others, which is the result of color bleeding and aging of the papyrus. There are no scribal lines to indicate a circle. Although this stain is like the others that give an appearance of a circle, Dr. Ashby excluded this one from his drawing, perhaps because this would throw off the number of assumed chakras from being 7 in number to 8. That would throw off the numbers. People are more familiar with 7 chakras. So this would be an 8th one, but it's not. It's not a circle at all. It's just the color, the ink bleeding. Okay, so now let's look at more. This is the hand of Enpu. So if you can see here, Enpu holding the hand of Kina. All right, so we're going to zoom in on it. That's what this is. So this is a close-up of the bracelet of Ma'at. That's a typo. That's the bracelet of Enpu. Now, what we can see is the bleeding effect. This is not a circle. You can clearly see the outline of a wrist here, and this was a clear outline of a bracelet. But it does appear as a circle because it looks stained now. We have to remember that these different papyri are very, very old and delicate. Okay. So this is what we're looking at. All right, let's move to another one. Here is Npu again. Here we see the same color bleeding extended around Npu's chest. So you see the outline of Npu here, or most people may know as Anubis. But let's just look at the head. See the ears? The ears are clearly defined in black, but then look around it. It looks like a brown cloud around it. That's the ink bleeding, stained. And you can see it around his body, right in front of his chest area right here, around the back part, around the shoulders. So the point here is that this papyrus is really an aged papyrus. It has stains on it and color bleeding, and people interpret it incorrectly. They may not have had a good copy of it to begin with, and probably work with reproductions of reproductions instead of getting the primary source. All right. Lastly, here's another one. Well, this is Npu's bracelet, and we can see the same bleeding here. All right. A close-up around the head. I already spoke about this. So this is the bleeding that's around here, and you can see the bleeding goes beyond the scribal lines. All right. They're beyond the scribal lines. You can see the bleeding. Okay, so I'm going to zoom back out, and so notice that you can see bleeding throughout this. Now this is only a one particular scene. There's more of this papyri that you can see. I would recommend that you get a copy of it as best you can. Facsimile. If you need me to send you a copy, just let me know. I'll send you a picture file of it. But you can see the bleeding even in the glyphs, where the inscription above the scene, where things are kind of damaged, color bleeding, blending, stains, etc. All right. So in conclusion, the images and figures and inscriptions are never separate. Okay, always remember that. The images that you see in these different scenes and the glyphs, the hieroglyphs or Sesh, Medew, Netcher, they are married. You cannot separate these things. All right. They go together. And so what happens is, because people may not know how to read the glyphs and the language, we'll just look at the pictures and then we'll just speculate and guess and just come up with all kinds of things. Okay. Now I bring this up is because the inscriptions in this scene make no mention of circles or chakras. It has nothing to do with chakras whatsoever. I show the effects of age and color bleeding. The quote-unquote circles are a result of the age and color bleeding of the original ink. There are no circles in the original work. They are originally rectangles that are part of the main post of the scale, the staff or pole post. Just as Ma'at and Npu's bracelets' original shape are rectangular to fit the contour of their wrist or arm, but because of aging and the bleeding of the color of the ink, they now appear as faded circles as well, extending beyond the actual scribal lines in the original inked drawing. Point 2. What is shown are the effects of age and color bleeding. The circles are a result of the age and color. Oh, this is just a repeat of the same conclusion. So I'm not going to read that. So, like I said, I don't want to drag this out too far. Hopefully that was clear. I'll show the picture again. You can clearly see that these are not circles at all. They're just stains of the color, the ink, that bled beyond the actual drawing lines. All right. And here's a picture of a snapshot of Dr. Moada Ashby's book, where they have the circles drawn as if they were there, and they're not. So let this be a lesson. Just be very mindful of different works. We all are prone to this. We try our best to do due diligence and apply rigor in our research and study, especially when we're passing information on to the public. But we all can make mistakes and things like that. And it's our job to improve on the knowledge. You know, we can't be too stiff to not be corrected, or people come along and tell us that we may have something wrong. All right, that's what scholarship is about. All right, we have to be flexible, and that's part of having good character, is that you have the ability to be corrected. If you're wrong, be responsible for the mistakes and correct it and keep it moving. All right, no need to be sensitive or get upset, mad. You know, those are all aspects of an inflated ego, and we should not have any egos that are on steroids when dealing with scholarship. All right, so I will look at the comments, and again, anybody who has tuned in, I really appreciate it. You all could have been doing anything. So let me scroll through, and if I miss your comment, I apologize, but whenever I'm live, I can only see a limited amount of comments. So I'm scrolling through. So I want to say ETM Hotep, you know, again, dua for tuning in. And I'm going to keep this brief, so let me fly through the comments. I normally, you know, I would do a roll call, but that would take up forever to shout out everybody. So, you know, let me just shout out everybody one time. Okay, let's see. Any questions? No questions. Everybody's saying Hotep, and all the greetings. Okay, Omar Justin Smith says, I've gone with a combination of science and spiritualism until I have come across more glands, chakras. Others are indirectly connected to a gland, but I'm going off of old reading. It's taken out of that instead of being the original intent. You asked a question. I'm not clear on that question. There's so much stem, for instance, taken from spiritualism. I'm not messing around, but I have seen things trying consideration for 8 chakras, and I think they do a relation with weed above the head of Ra. What if I sometimes see symbolisms? Okay, brother Omar, I am not quite clear on what you're trying to ask, so please just reword that. Yeah, I can't really respond to that. Hotep Ifatunde Fayimi. All right. That is why it's important to observe the Majat books, papyrus scrolls directly and not rely solely on reproductions. Exactly. That's a very good point. And that's very important. Let's see. Hindu stuff. Some say the K. Some say Kemetic priests migrated to invent the chakra system. Never seen anything or read anything to validate this. Majawit, papyrus scroll books, manuscripts. Yes, migrated to India. Sonnet Marine. Sonnet Imiket. If those were indeed 7 chakras, there would be mention in of the number 7 in the wording referred to chakras in the text, but I don't think there's any, nor do we know of Sesh, Medew, Netcher word for chakras. Is this correct? Well, definitely the first part of what you said is definitely correct. The text, and let me go back to it so you can see the inscriptions. Like I said, I said the descriptions always go with the scene, the figures in the scene. They always tell you what's going on. We don't have to guess. We could just read it. And this is the judgment scene. This is a judgment scene that's popular in all of the Peret Imheru, or Ra'u Niu Peret Imheru, the coming forth utterances for coming forth by day, or commonly known as the Book of the Dead. All right, these are rituals, and you see them throughout different papyri. The one of Ani, Hunefer, this particular one, Malhebri. There are many of them, and none of them mention chakras. All right, for the judgment scene. Let's see. I'm on it for the science involved. This is son brother Omar. I'm on it for the science involved in nutrition and particular things individually and then combined. Okay, that's nice. I mean, like I said, the chakra system, and I started off for those who may tune in late. I start off, this is not a jab at chakras or people who are practitioners of any Indus Valley system. Like I said, these systems are closed systems and should be left in the context of where they were developed. And then I know that there's people who will say that, well, everything originates out of Africa and they stole it from Africa, therefore it's ours in the first place, and so on and so forth. You know, that's neither here nor there, because all of humanity, every single Homo sapien on the planet today, ultimately came out of Africa. But yet, through our migrations and things, we adopt different systems and we create new systems to adjust to various different things. So just because something ultimately originates from Africa does not mean that's an excuse to just arbitrarily and randomly just pick anything and stick it together. You know, these systems have purpose. Just like a car, the analogy I gave, they have purpose. And so these systems are beautiful. Feng Shui. I know people who practice Feng Shui. I know people who practice I Ching, use the Chinese divination system, but they're smart enough to keep it in China. I mean, you know, in that context. Bazi astrology, you know, the way that they do the energy grid on the body with the acupuncture and things. All of that. It's a beautiful system, but it needs to stay in the context of where it is. All right. And within the language that it's transmitted through. Just like if you're a Muslim, it would be to your advantage to learn Arabic, because that's the language that the religion is documented in. The Quran is written in Arabic. All right, etc. All right, so let me keep going. Is this still an issue? Hopefully I'm pronouncing your name, Cache Ivy, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Is it still an issue? Well, not really, but it's just, you know, I'm just sharing information because I do see it come up. And like I said, people who deal with it are, you know, obviously free to do so. It's just that we need to keep things what they are and where they are. Shazmu Netcher, did any Egyptian priests ever migrate to India? As far as the literature that I'm familiar with, and I've read quite a bit, I won't say I've read everything that's ever written. I won't dare say that, but I've read quite a bit, and I haven't come across any literature so far where a Kemetic priest or Kemeti priest documents that they went to India and came back and etc. Well, you know, it depends on what you call in India, but you know, we know the Middle East, so-called, you know, the Middle East, West Asia, South, and different lands. But India, I have yet to read something like that. I would love to, if someone else can point it out. Let's see. If Atunde, did any Kemetic priests migrate to India? Oh, he's answering the question too. All right, Dua. All right. Sonat Imiket, I think it's done to persuade Africans worldwide who might look down upon these foreign systems to practice them. Yeah, that's a good point. See, you know, these other systems are beautiful. Like I said, they're beautiful, and I suggest people to practice them. You know, yoga, for example, is a very good practice. The meditative aspect of it, the breathing aspects of it, the flexibility, the physical aspects of yoga are very, very useful and beneficial. So my point is not to mix match these systems, because they're closed. You can't do that, or you shouldn't do that. All right, practice them. You know, I would like to learn yoga. You know, if there's any yoga instructors that have time, you know, some patience, then, you know, I would love to get with someone and learn yoga. All right, and things like that. There's nothing wrong with it. So again, I don't want it to be misconstrued what I'm saying or my position. I'm clearly just presenting the facts about this particular papyri, that it does not deal with anything dealing with chakras. All right. So, and I think that was the last question or statement. Okay, brother Les, my question is related but different. There is a term in Netcher related to meditation that I have heard of a few years ago, but I have never got anyone to explain what it was. I will find it again and ask about it later. Seeing as chakras were not a part of our ancient systems, what system of spiritual cultivation did we have in our ancient culture? I believe in the Maxims of Ptahhotep, you have told me that there is a line where he states something along the lines of looking into the self or focusing on the thoughts in the mind. How can that be recovered or expounded upon so that it could be used for the cultivation of our own ka or spirit today? That's an excellent question, or questions. Now, let's not, like, again, we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Again, the chakra system and all these different practices are effective and beautiful systems if kept in the proper context. Now, so in Kemet, if someone wants to practice something similar, or it, you have to find out how that system operated. And so that's where the work should be done and the research should be done. But to answer your question, there is a statement where we would say Reki im ibi, which means that I know what is in my heart. And the word the ib, actually, it is the ib that is weighed on the scale. So this is a good example. You see the heart that's on the scale. This is not meant to be taken literally, because we know that a heart will always outweigh a feather, literally. So the heart is used as a symbol for the mind. And we even use this word heart the same way today when we say, I want to get to the heart of the problem. I want to get to the heart of the matter. We're talking about the innermost part of something, the essence of something. So the heart is a reference to your essence or your mind. And you're judged based on your words and your deeds. And that's produced by your mind, because as you think, so you behave. All right. And so when we say Reki im ibi, Reki means I know im ibi, what is in my heart. I mean, you have knowledge of your own mind. You have control over your faculties. And so this is what we should strive to do. So that phrase is being interpreted as know thyself. So when they say know thyself, the word knowledge is Reki, I know. Know thyself, self being ib, the mind. So people say know thyself, but what you really mean is that you have to know the functions of your mind. And in Kemet, the spirit is not seen as this one homogeneous entity. The spirit was in parts, and this is why you have different words that they translate as spirit. You have Ba, Ka, Ren, Sahu, Ak, Kaibit, even the Kat, which is the body. What else? The Ak, the Sekhem. All these different components of the spirit. You have the 14 Ka'u of Ra, Ka'u being plural for spirit. So the Nile Valley Africans didn't see the spirit as this one thing. And so knowledge of all of this stuff is what we should strive to do. That's where you get your cultivation. You have to cultivate that. All right. In these aspects. Okay. So just keep that in mind. Hopefully I answered your question. Let me see the last part. Ptahhotep, spiritual cultivation. Yeah. So again, don't want to drag this out too long. Okay, Ifatunde, that you see my recent comment. Let me see. Scroll back. Okay, it says think about this logic. I'll just read it so everyone can sort of be on the video. Did any Kemetic priests migrate to India? There isn't much of any evidence. Many say that Kemetic priests migrated out of Kemet due to invasions. Think about this logic. Think about this logic. The historical invasions were from Western Asia and Europe. Why would Kemetic priests running away from invasions from the east and north migrate in the same directions as the invaders? See, that's logical. The safe directions will be southwest and southwest of Kemet, or farther into Africa, into the interiors of Africa. This is why it's hard for me to believe they are to India and create the chakra system. So that's a good logical. That's a good point, and it's consistent with logic, and it's consistent with what we find today in the living traditions of today in the Congo, in Central Africa today, and south of Kemet, of Egypt today. We have the same customs and practices. You have the Kalenjin people, you have the different people in Uganda, Kenya, the Democratic Republic of Congo, even over towards West Africa. You'll see some of the similar practices and things. So you have some initiates who have become scholars in their own right and have written books, and they will tell you about their experiences, and they will mention a lot of things that you can find that correspond to what we find in the literature in ancient Kemet. All right. So it will be there to look first, then to go all the way over to India and Australia and, these other places. So keep that in mind. All right. So let's see. Anything else lastly? What is the Ethiopians or their descendants that developed the chakras off of an Ethiopian contribution to Rani Kemet? Again, the chakra system is a beautiful system. You learn about it, the system and the language that entire system is conveyed in. That's what I would suggest. Read the literature. Same thing with yoga. Same thing with Tantra, Kama Sutra. All of those Indus Valley systems. They're beautiful systems. I know people who practice them in their proper context, and these people are healthy people. You can tell that they're practicing something. It goes beyond health. It's their character. Most of these systems, these indigenous systems around the world, not just Africa, they deal heavily on character, because your character is essentially who you are. And to mold a person with good character will eventually produce good people that will eventually produce good things for other good people. And so you're born as an animal, you're domesticated into becoming a human, and then you grow in wisdom and become a god. So you start off as an animal, you domesticate as a human, then you become a divine being or God. Some people don't like that word God, then say divine being. So that's your life's path. You're born, when I say wild, people may be offended by that, but we are born wild. That's why we have to be domesticated. We have to be trained, as a wild, we don't know anything. We have to be, trained by our parents, taught, educated, and domesticated. Learn how to do this, learn how to do that. That's the domestication process. And then when we go from a human into our older age, wisdom and experience starts to shape and mold us into divine beings if done properly. So anyway, I don't want to stretch this out. So again, I say dua. Thanks for tuning in. I'm gonna keep up these short lessons. I've done this is probably I think the 6th or 7th one that I've done so far. You can see them on my timeline. I was doing them inside of a Facebook group, but I realized that you can't share it. So I'm doing them on my timeline, making sure that they're public and you can share them, discuss it, ask me questions. If you feel I've made a mistake or I'm error or you have information to share with me, by all means, you can inbox me or type in the comments. And if you're watching this as an archive, I do revisit the comments and try my best to answer the questions. So again, dua for tuning in, and always remain respectful to people that practice these different systems. I have much respect for those who practice the yoga, inclusive of the chakra systems, everything that comes with it, with the meditation, from India or the Indus systems, the Asian systems, and all of the African systems. We have to always be respectful and mindful of other people's practices, because we will want the same. All right. So I will say Shimon Hotep, and I appreciate, and hopefully you benefit from this. All right. So Shimon Hotep.